I'm Aaron Sagers, and this is Talking Strange.
Hey there, spooky nerds. Welcome back to Talking Strange, the paranormal pop culture show. I'm Aaron Sagers, and as I'm recording this, it's just about halfway to Halloween, Walpurgisnacht, which is the witches' Sabbath, according to German folklore, where the witches would fly around on broomsticks and they'd have a wild party with the dead, and they'd fly up to the highest peak of the mountains. And during this time of year, it was celebrated. You would ward off evil spirits, and villagers would light bonfires and ring bells and go all sorts of crazy to celebrate halfway to Halloween. And it's the eve of Beltane, the old Gaelic festival, which is celebrated on May 1st. And that marks the beginning of summer, but it's also halfway to Halloween. Why am I saying all this? Well, because, you know, for those of us that love spooky season, it's not really a season, it's a year-round holiday and celebration, right? But still, there's something special about Halloween and something special about halfway to Halloween. And honestly, in this world that sometimes can be a little bit tough, let's just celebrate things, right? So, with that in mind, I was thinking about this halfway to Halloween episode, and I was thinking about where I would celebrate it, and I would go back out to Vegas. I'm not gonna lie. Not for the gambling so much, that's not so much my style, but that is where horror Unleashed exists. Universal Horror Unleashed. And I've talked a little bit about it on the show before, but that is the permanent installation experience from Universal Studios, spun off of their Halloween Horror Nights event in Hollywood, as well as the long-running event in Orlando, going on 35 years, I believe, this year of Halloween Horror Nights. I started going when I was a little itty bitty kid, when I didn't have gray hair and didn't have a beard. A whole different story. And, back in a long time ago. So I've been going there for a long time. And I love Halloween Horror Nights because there's always high production value, haunted houses, a lot of bang for your buck, as well as I do love those haunted houses, both inspired by established movies and intellectual property, but really I think where Halloween Horror Nights shines is on their original concept houses. And so Horror Unleashed in Las Vegas is the permanent haunted house attraction out there near the Area 51, at the Area 51 complex in Terminal 2. And Halloween Horror Nights is massive, something like, I think, 1,200 square feet, not 100,000 square feet, I believe. And the four haunted house attractions based on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, based on the Exorcist Believer movie, based on Universal Monsters, and based on the original concept Scarecrow the Reaping, which was also a house at the Halloween Horror Nights. I got a chance to go out there, and this massive complex, went through all the houses, watched the show, the Jack the Clown and his sidekick Chance, their Stay or Slay show. I ate all the foods at the Blumhouse Premiere House, at the Boiler Bar, at Rough Cuts, at Jack's Alley Bar. I ate and drank my way through it, along with my buddy Mike Gagliano, who does the show on Beacon TV called Para with a Normal. And yeah, so I explored it all. And for halfway to Halloween, I wanted to talk to some of the creatives behind Horror Unleashed, because you can go now. You can go year round. That it's going to be open. So go celebrate spooky season now, halfway to Halloween, all throughout the summer and into the dead of winter. and right through fall and Halloween and all that good stuff. So today, my guests are two of the creatives behind the Horror Unleashed. We've got TJ Mannarino, who is the Vice President of Entertainment, Art, and Design, Universal Destinations and Experiences. And he's been an active part of the entertainment community for more than 35 years. And in his current role, he is responsible for the conceptual development and production of live entertainment. Oh, and at attractions, including at the Lowe's Hotel, City Walk, everything. And he's been with Universal for 28 years. And we're also going to talk to Nate Stevenson, who is a show director of creative development and entertainment. And he's been with Universal for 15 years, Universal Orlando specifically. And he's also partnered with names such as Universal Pictures, MGM, Sony, Warner Brothers, Lionsgate, Netflix, Amblin, Blumhouse, Naughty Dog, Monkey Paw Productions to bring those intellectual properties to life. So, going to talk to TJ and Nate about Horror Unleashed and some of the behind the scenes stories and inspiration between these haunted houses. So, listen to the interview, come back, and we'll talk a little bit more about Horror Unleashed on the other side of the interview. All right, TJ and Nate, thanks so much for joining me today to talk about Universal Horror Unleashed. As I spoke a little bit before we started recording, I grew up in Orlando, so like Halloween Horror Nights, I think I can say that I was there pretty much within the first year, which dates me a little bit, and I've gone most years. So I guess let's do a little bit of background as far as how you each of you came to be a part of this project, and just sort of this mission going into this mission, how it was different compared to other Halloween Horror Nights that we've seen in both Orlando and in Hollywood, as well as the other kind of show initiatives we've seen come out of Universal theme parks. So let's start with that. I know those are kind of big questions to start with, but TJ, you want to kick it off with
Sure,
that?
no problem. Well, how did we get involved? Well, first of all, like I said, I like yourself, there is definitely a very strong community of horror enthusiasts at Universal. I think most of us all harken back to not only our original love of the classic monsters, but in some aspects, like myself, and I know Nate too, grew up on those early classic black and whites, those horrific creatures that came out of nowhere and kind of etched in our memory. Surprisingly, a love of those creatures, and then to have the opportunity to create our own monsters and horrific stories with Universal here in Orlando. I'm lucky enough to have been part of this team for over 30 years. So some of the original Horror Nights kind of start and find its way in this crazy world that now has grown into a permanent year-round attraction with our Las Vegas installation with Horror Unleashed. So for me, I kind of find a lot of my role in was asked to kind of be a part was really to bring that history, that original. How do we start from a certain place and evolve Halloween Horror Nights into the kind of event, major attraction that it is now across 5 parks around the world. And again, to kind of start that new evolution of now, how do we bring a different type of horror experience to Las Vegas, and with a wonderful partner that Nate has been on this project, is to bring what are those things that we do so well, what are the things that we want to do differently, and what are those things that we want to see Horror Unleash grow and evolve into, like the parks did, and really in kind of in some aspects of where the picture group has grown Universal Horror also. So that's kind of my short story. Like I said, I've been a part of, like I said, Universal Horror for many years, have always loved it, grew up with it. And then again, excited to be part of it, kind of its future now here with Las Vegas. So I'll throw it over to.
Yeah. Well, actually, before you begin, Nate, let me ask
Yeah.
TJ as a follow-up. Just for folks out there that have spent a lot of time going to HHN, what would be some of the houses throughout the years that would have your fingerprints on it sort of the most? I know we're talking about, over 30 years, I guess, of
Over 30
Halloween Horror
years.
Nights, but yeah.
One that people recognize now, again, this was right after some of the large blockbuster films of Titanic. We did a house called Frightanic. That was our version of a horrific steam liner that you go on to two different experiences. One was called Fear in First Class, which was the upper decks all through the more luxury parts of the ocean liner, and then there was another part of that house which was called Carnage Crew, which took you down into the depths of the liner to all of the crew places like the infirmary, to the captain's quarters, to the bridge. So those are some of the early days of Halloween Horror Nights when we were really telling our own stories and coming up with unique experiences. I was part of the team that brought Halloween Horror Nights to Islands of Adventure, and figured out how do we now take what we had been doing only in Universal Studios, but also bringing it to a whole new landscape at Islands, and how the event really shifted and changed because of these new spaces, these new places, and in some aspects capturing a little bit more of that thrill that Islands of Adventure brought to our brand with roller coasters and dark rides like Spider-Man and others. So that was a little bit of the work I did. Also did a lot with the early versions of our website. So how do we tell our story to our guests before they even step foot in the park? So some of the early versions of our entertainment themed websites in the years of Terra Cruentus or other types of environments of characters like storyteller, caretaker, Jack in some aspects. So those are some of my early days. Mostly I've moved into more helping launch Halloween in other parks, Hollywood, Japan, Singapore, and then also establishing what are some of the new things we see come to our event, like we did the repository in 2016, which was a version of uh, virtual reality, live immersive theater, and a little bit of escape room all thrown into one as a horror experience and stuff.
Mm.
So that's a little bit of my history with the event.
All right. And Nate.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start my history with Universal. When I started with Universal, I started as a performer, and I was Louis Tully in the Ghostbuster show. So the Rick Moranis character in the Ghostbuster show back in the day, and shooting ghosts and things. And I did a lot of performing for about 6 or 7 years there. So when this started, the whole thing started, I was a performer at Universal. I wasn't involved in the earliest stages, like TJ. I just went to the event. But I moved out to LA. I was out there for quite a while. And when I came back, this Horror Nights had become a juggernaut of an event. And I picked up some other skill sets out in LA, directing and writing and things like that. And so when I came back, the team brought me on to start working with Horror Nights. So I've been with Horror Nights for 16, 17 years or so. And at first I started in the capacity of just kind of helping run the event. And then I was an assistant show director for the event, which really I would help with the creative during the creative process, and then I would work my way over into running the event. And then in the last few years there, I became a show director and started writing some of the content. So to kind of answer the question you asked, TJ, I think the last one I was involved with, I was already working on the Vegas project, and so I only had the ability to write a couple houses, but I did the Blood Moon house and the Last of Us house was the last things I kind of was working on, and I helped run the event that year. And then, for the last 15 years, I've kind of been in the room with the creatives and kind of helping the creative along, and then moving on to running the event. in the work up to Vegas, we were doing some other things too. TJ and we worked on the escape rooms that are out in City Walk, and then we did this really cool thing a couple years ago out in New York, where you are. The To Nightmares with Jimmy Fallon. We worked on that together, and we worked with his team to create that. All the while working on the Vegas project as well. So I bring that kind of experience of not only the creating the houses and the event, but also kind of running the event. So I kind of have that operational sense as well, which I think has helped in this process, because it's kind of I always kind of say the success of Horror Nights is really 50% creating the thing and making this amazing creative journey, and then also the other 50% is all these amazing people that run the thing, right, and run it right, so that it's a fun experience for everybody.
How did you approach these houses? How did, I mean, even just the format dictate that you have to approach these houses differently than your Halloween Horror Nights houses that are, going up, I guess, around late August and then running until, the first week of November? That's temporary. So
Yeah.
how did this format kind of dictate approaching this
Well,
differently?
it's like anything, we knew immediately we were going to have what we call more time to tell story. We know we're limited in the parks for not only the window of time you have with our story, because as you're very familiar with, the parks live in a year lifespan and then everything changes. So our audience gets a short time to really know the stories, understand the characters, and really, even when they're at the event, because of the time that you have at the event, you get limited time with those characters and those environments and those thematics. We knew when we started our project that was a big goal. How can we give our audience more time to really spend with our characters, spend more time in those environments and those places that we're going to now transport you to? And part of that was also to say we're going to pulse our haunted houses. So in other words, we're going to have you take a little bit more time within the haunted attractions, which we have not been able to do in the parks really since 2000, almost 20 years ago, is when we actually stopped pulsing because just the capacity need. That was more of a functional thing. We had to tell our story differently. We had to even design the houses differently. So that was the first goal. How do we give more time? How do we allow our audience to spend, more of that unique space that we've created that you don't get at our events? And then a lot of it really was about some of the unique things that I'll let Nate talk about, which was how can we give you more story? Because most of the haunted attractions that we've always been a part of, and most of the industry, and you're probably very well of this too, is really built around what we call those kind of climactic moments, when the scare happens. And then you move on to the next show scene and you come involved with a new character or a new space. And then what happens next are these kind of exclamations of terror, not so much the run up, the experience itself, and then kind of the trickle off, which is a little bit more of a different type of way. And then Nate can tell you a little bit of those things that we created specifically for Las Vegas.
Yeah, so I mean, one thing that was really different is that as much as we try to change the park for Halloween Horror Nights, we're still overlaying a park that exists, right? And so, we have amazing fans, and willing suspension of disbelief is out there. So, but they still walk out of a haunted house and they're in a theme park again, and what was neat about this was going to be horror from the ground up. We built this building ourselves, like, this thing is horror 365 days a year. So we needed kind of an overarching theme that people were going to walk into, that people kind of lived in, right? While they were in this building. And that's unique because we have had themes or thematics that kind of run through the entire park before, but usually it's kind of bit parts. You go in a street and you get that thematic, then you go to another street and they have a different thematic there. This, we really wanted to pay homage to our history. We have this, century plus long history of Universal horror. And so we built it into this production warehouse where for over a century they've been storing all these haunted props and items. And we thought that would be a really fun overlay. You know what I mean? And kind of a fun world to live in when you're not in the haunted houses themselves. So that was a big difference, is kind of building the story of the building that you're in and the place that you're in, along with kind of the individual stories of each one of the houses. And then we wanted to make that thoroughfare, that main area, kind of more fun and more interactive. So we added some kind of cool characters that you can interact with, that'll come up and talk to you, and you can talk to them. And they have levels of story. You know, if you want to delve into that and you want to talk to them, they'll talk back and they'll share their whole story with you, and some of the story of the space. So it was really about that, really about just kind of getting a little deeper on story, and making it a world that you could live in. Me and TJ always talked about that. We really wanted for people to walk in this door and then live in this world of horror from the moment they walk in till the moment they leave.
And go on, TJ. Sorry.
No, and I just wanted to kind of, and also kind of really punctuate that, and that really was also a big step that we hadn't done much, which is really involve food and beverage in the overall storytelling and the thematic design. In the past, we had done elements that kind of captured something within an IP realm or component, but this was, to Nate's point, to create a world of horror, to put you in a place that now lives this, year round. The food and the beverage had to be part of that same type of storytelling, that same type of experience. In some aspects, that same sense of transportation, take you to a place you've never been before. And in some aspects, it very much parallels what we're doing in Epic universe, where the portals take you to a different world, and everything past those portals really, continues to strengthen the story, strengthen the experience, and give you that sense that you have been really taken to a different place. And that was a lot of what we wanted, Las Vegas to be, and we're excited to say that that's kind of what we got.
Yeah, and it's funny because I went in to Horror Unleashed thinking I was gonna, I was operating on a media tour, so I thought I'd be in and out, go through the houses, have a couple bites of to eat, and I ended up being there all day because it really was immersive. And I was actually surprised by the how much interaction I was having with the various characters. And then moving through the houses, I don't know if pulsing the line would be the equivalent of, from my experience, like it felt like the line was staggered. Like there was,
Yes.
I wasn't like I was on top of other people going through there. It felt like a very intimate walkthrough, and which
That's
just
great. That's great to hear, and that's really the idea. Those things you're saying are the things we really focused on. So I love to hear that was your experience, because that's really what we wanted. And we wanted people to really be able to kind of take the time that you don't get to take, to kind of see the detail of the house and all the details that are within. We even built a couple little story moments within the thing that punched up the story, like the big dust storm that rolls in Scarecrow and things like that.
yeah, and it also, yeah, these kind of show moments. I felt like these extended scenes, and I'm thinking Universal Monsters. I'm thinking specifically of that one, and then Exorcist, the beginning. We have this big moment where, or True Believer. Damn it, I forget the name of the house right now. But um, but these big moments where you're really forced to pause and take it in, and it's delightful to the point that for someone that goes through the houses many or have been through HHN many times, I'm like, wait, should I just be moving? Wait, no, I'm allowed to stay here for a minute. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
This is cool.
I know. It is a different, for people who have spent a lifetime experiencing, what the parks offer. That was the biggest thing for us, who again have been part of those environments and helping build that style of storytelling. We recognize that, yes, here's a place that we can give our audience the ability to kind of really find their home, if you want to call it that. And again, I know we talked before how much, I guess, that I love your shirt, but again, that's a piece that really has evolved and really, I think, become kind of the new world of horror. In the past, horror lived, as I used to say, and we used to talk a lot about, used to live only in the fall. it found its place within those 3 months. And that's when you only could find or buy or even feel like you could talk about horror or experience it. But now horror has become this year-round experience, and you can see horror films that Universal has created in the spring and February and March. You can go to now haunted attraction in this kind of different window of time and be a part of horror all year. And so that was again exciting for us to see how much not only has the industry grown, but how much the audience has now made it a part of their daily routine. And that was something that we really wanted to give you a place that you felt you could be there and come back as many times and feel like it also was a place that also grows and changes. And so I know that's another thing that we're excited about this space becoming too.
Yeah. And I want to get to the individual houses in a moment, but just kind of along those lines, as well as having these moments where you're pausing and looking and you're kind of living in this world a little bit longer. And the houses, I don't know the length of the walkthrough compared to your standard HHN houses, but it did feel like a longer experience. The But that also creates some logistical challenges, I would imagine, because when you're going through a house you're through it in 7 minutes, maybe in a standard haunted house attraction or a Halloween Horror Nights, things are happening fast. There's a lot of flashing lights. With Horror Unleashed, it also presents this moment for you to potentially see the seams, to see a little bit too much of a peek behind the curtain. I mean, that runs the risk. I didn't feel that way,
Yeah.
but the logistical challenges of having this, speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, and this kind of gets into that operational portion that I was saying, how it's 50% the creative, 50% operational, right? Is that um we lament this all the time with Halloween Horror Nights. The way we build these houses to have no seams and the level of detail that goes into these rooms, you really can only get when you go on like an RIP tour or a UTH tour, I'm asking the horror tour here at Halloween Horror Nights. I mean, you really can't understand the level of artistry that goes into these things, where you can stand in a room with all the lights on and that room is still that room. There aren't any seams. It's kind of impossible to see, and we build them that way, And so when the lights are on, or I'm sorry, when the lights are off, and we turn on the show lights, and you're in that environment fully, you really should be able to just hang out there and not see much that way. So it's a little bit of a payoff for us in that they're built to withstand people just kind of hanging out and looking right at them and studying the scenes and things. I mean, if anything, you're going to see Easter eggs you didn't see when you were pushed through quickly, you know what I mean? Or fun little portions. So in that sense, I think we built it the way we always build them. And now you're just able to see how much artistry there is to kind of what we're doing. But from an operational standpoint, I think the challenge was people are going to be pulsing, and we still need to make sure those people get scares, but at the same time not exhaust our performers with them jumping out every 5 seconds in scaring air, So that took a level of new kind of work and new kind of thought process on how the house should operate and how it should work, and we work with our operational partners out there in Vegas to accomplish that. And I think we have. I think you still get, if anything, you get a higher level of scare. You might get chased a little longer in a house, so you might have a little bit longer time with some of these characters. I was able to build longer VO pieces, or like everything's on a trigger, right? So that we can reinforce the scare with this really loud trigger. And when we're Congo lining through houses, you might get like a word or two from a character, or just a roar and a quick flash, and then it's on to the next thing. Here, I was able to have, like for instance, in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre house, I'm able to have these characters pop out and say full lines from the film. You know what I mean? And that was kind of fun, and you get to spend a little bit more time with these characters. So there was definitely a level of thought when it came into the operation of the house, and an extra level of creativity that had to kind of be attached to it to make it work.
The we have the Exorcist Believer House and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where it does feel like we're very much walking through the movie. We're living, living the movies. And with the Universal Monsters and the Scarecrow, the Reaping, we're getting these new storylines. So I wanted to first off briefly break down the Universal Monsters storyline in the house, and but also I'm curious about the development of that plot line because let's face it, like I am such a Universal Monsters kid, but we haven't had this unified Monsters verse. The closest we came were Abbott and Costello movies, but we still, as fans and love these things, built it up into this crossover world, this shared cinematic universe. And there's been attempts to do that through the movies, and Dark Universe is doing it nicely with Darkmore, kind of set in modern times. But all of that build up, walk me through the plot line and the development of that storyline for the Universal Monsters house at Horror Unleashed.
Yeah, so this is again exciting for us. And I gotta just, I mean, we feel so lucky and fortunate. Universal gives us opportunities to explore things that we nerds always have wanted to explore and try and do. And it was so exciting for us that we were able to slow down a little bit and do some things we really want to do in Halloween Horror Nights, but there's just not time. Uh, for our audience to kind of take those things in, and so all that work would kind of be lost. So for instance, in the first Universal Monsters house that we did, we kind of did this crossfade and it was just kind of a crossfade between each thing, and it was kind of neat. And the idea was you're just kind of crossing in and out of all these different monsters. But this challenged us to say, you're going to have this huge, holding area, this big space where it's a story room basically, where you get to build all the story that people are going to see before they go, and then you can tie every bit of this together. And that excited me so much as a creative to be able to do that. And then when we all got in the creative room and the whole big creative table was talking, we were going, who ties all this together better than Van Helsing? He's the one that is gone, and he's fought all these monsters and things like that. And in our own event here at HHM, we've really not only explored that, but we explored like his daughter Saskia, who in the houses and the new Universal houses that we've done, and Universal Monster houses we've done, and that sort of thing. So we said this is a perfect chance to kind of tie all these things together into one big through line, and then we can deliver that through line in this first area. So we started you in this or we start you in this crypt that's Van Helsing's crypt. And there's this, I know you went, but there's this just awesome sarcophagus of him with Van Helsing on top of it. It's just so neat. And then there's story that comes where we got to do this whole VO of him basically saying, you tell yourselves these stories by firelight and you don't think that they're real, you think they're just made up, but I'm here to tell you I experienced this and I fought these creatures, and these creatures are as real as you and I. And then essentially you're walking through Van Helsing's journeys. If you really pay attention in each room, Van Helsing has a little bit of a voiceover, a little bit of a lead in to each monster about how he fought, which if you look at it, it's we took those directly from the old black and white classic films. You know what I mean? These lines that Van Helsing says as you enter in. So it was just really fun to be able to kind of tie that whole universe together under one common storyline or through line. And that's where we started. It's just with excitement to be able to do it. And then we said, well, what logically it could tie these things together? And Van Helsing felt like the way to do it.
It did feel like a very cinematic experience as far as the addressing the challenges of tying all these creatures together, all these different movies. And so it felt right, we're going through this mausoleum and these various scenes, and then they kind of all come together. I liked it quite a bit. What about Scarecrow the Reaping? Obviously, I forget which year, but that was, we've seen that at Halloween Horror Nights. I know it was in Orlando. I don't know if it carried over to Hollywood, uh, but why that one as making the leap to Horror Unleashed, and then building out that backstory a little bit more.
Interesting, because we've also been asked why we chose the certain houses that we did include into Horror Unleashed, and what we talk a lot about, which is when you do come to Halloween Horror Nights, the things that we did find were strong pillars to want to make consistent across both the park's type of experience of a live horror event and also now in Las Vegas, is that the audience that you come with usually is a group of people, unless you're like us who go by ourselves. But you usually come with a group of people. And in that group, there is usually a variety of what people love about horror, scared by within horror, and what they'll take away from as their memorable experiences of the night. And what we looked at was that that's not dictated by any one thematic or one story or even one type of character. The debate between werewolves and vampires, it ever ongoing. But so what we said was that to make this experience rich and diverse for our audiences, it has to have multiple styles of horror and multiple styles of places we're going to take you that hit different milestones or pillars of what we consider to be kind of those mainstays of the horror genre. So horror finds its classic and romance versions of Universal monsters in one, versus that kind of slasher gore with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But to answer your question about Scarecrow, what we've found with our event is those traditions that are rooted in the aspect of celebrating Halloween when you were growing up, from scarecrows to pumpkins to, black crows, are very, very strong within our audience. And anytime we do something with that in our event, it becomes one of our fan favorites of original stories and characters we've created. So that's what really told us, is that was a place in our kind of hit list of horror, had to be an original story talked about or focused on those original traditions of Halloween that are very strong with everybody and easy for people to get. Another thing is that, sometimes you have to make something familiar within your horror for people to be afraid of it. Because if it's too foreign to them, then it depends too much on trying to get the story for them to find out what they're afraid of. So those things were things that became easy for us to say. Scarecrow was a fan favorite. Scarecrow hits these markers that we want, and also was diverse and different than the other things that we had within the event already, or in our location in Las Vegas. So again, been very successful and chose and to be the right choice because it's one of the favorite houses within Las Vegas.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess scarecrows and cornfields are terrifying. I guess you might say that's a universal
Yeah.
element of horror.
They are, and honestly, just to kind of piggyback on that, just a little bit of a shout out to Charles Gray, who's our senior show director for HHN, just a creative genius in his own right. And he'll take something as simple as a scarecrows and make them into something unique that you've never seen before, setting it in this Dust Bowl era. And these scarecrows aren't just scarecrows that you've seen before. This is like bits of mud and bone and beast that all like come up from the earth, and it's the earth taking revenge. And that was, I sit right next to him here, and there was a lot of times I had him come over, and we talked about this a lot, because there was a lot of things in that very first version of that house that was so popular we didn't get to fully realize. Like for instance, that cornfield that you walk through in Vegas, where you're walking through the entire cornfield and there's a storm going, and the mirroring, so it feels like you're in the middle of this cornfield at the end, and these scarecrows are attacking you. That's what it always was meant to be. But in the version where we had in Orlando and Hollywood, we weren't able to fully realize that. And there's a number of those things too, the dust storm, and then that big story in the very beginning. Honestly, this is beautiful voiceover that Charles Gray wrote about this Dust Bowl era and what this was, that nobody ever got to hear or know about. And we were able to apply those things and just take this already incredible world and expand it. So just a little bit of a shout out that way. I think part of the reason that was so successful and continues to be successful. If it's not just scarecrows, it's a completely different version of that sort of thing that's traditional that you've never seen before.
You mentioned the kind of the pulsing of the lines, also these scene kind of moments. Is there anything else that is on display at Horror Unleashed that you just weren't able to do before? And the second part of that, I guess, would be what was sort of the hardest effect to pin down when you're bringing this together as a longer experience, but also a longer lasting, built to last experience.
I would say we've talked a little bit about this was the pre-show experiences. Every house has the actual entrance stepped back from the main entertainment areas, which is the main flow of the building. And we wanted to do that for two reasons too, which we don't really have that luxury in the parks. One, we wanted to get a natural transition out of the main circulation and entertainment spaces, those characters, those environments, and in some aspects, that level of interaction is a little bit more of atmospheric and mood setting and tone, and where when you step into the haunted attractions, that definitely goes up to a high level. There's a lot more activity, interaction, scare, and stuff. But we wanted to give you a breath before you got right into that. And then we also felt that was a time to tell that story. If you weren't familiar with Exorcist the Believer, if you weren't familiar with Texas Chainsaw, and that history about that film and the story that you're about ready to step into, it gave us those places to tell that. We've already told you a little bit about Scarecrow and the story of Scarecrow, and then Van Helsing's crypt. All of those spaces were specifically designed to be pre-shows, to tell you the story, to get you set and give you a little bit of an anticipation before you actually entered the attraction and the experience at a whole different level, and now step into those worlds. And that's, again, we don't have that luxury in the parks, in any of our parks. You pretty much come from the park atmosphere, usually to the front door, and then you're right into the experience. And you don't get that sense of story or pre-show. So that was what we got very, very excited about for Las Vegas.
And I'd piggyback on what he's saying to do an answer to your other question. What was kind of challenging about these bigger experiences is literally the things he's talking about. When you're building a kind of a tried and true room that we know how it works, and we know the very most impactful few special effects that we can put in there. We've done that for a long time. We know exactly how to do that. When we expand a room out and then say, we got to tell a full story in this room. It's kind of funny, even in the treatments for these, the treatments are, for each room is a few pages long. And then you get to the story one and the treatment pages are like 15 pages long. You know what I mean? Because it's like, it's just figuring out all these special effects and how they're going to work and how they work together. We actually built a new acronym in a new type of trigger called an actor activated sequence, because we have actor activated triggers and we have non-actor activated triggers, which are triggers that just kind of run in a house. But now we have actor activated sequences, because this is literally a full sequence of events that starts at one point and stops at another, which is really a show. And they essentially have to fire the entire show all in one and then reset and go again. And we've not really done that, you know what I mean? And so that was challenging, and in a fun way, you know what I mean? Because we're figuring out all these new ways that we can tell stories and all these different special effects we can maybe try with our effects team that we've not tried before. But also a challenge of how do you create something different and unique and dynamic, more dynamic than we already do, which I think we already do a pretty good job of in HHN. So I think the technical side of that was where we were challenged a bit in the building of those larger scenes that TJ's talking about.
If you can say these, like we said, we're talking when it comes to HHN Halloween Horror Nights, we're talking about something that's going to last for, a short window, less than 2 months basically, or maybe I guess a little bit over 2 months. And with this, it's year round. But how long? What like internally, I think it's reasonable. We know that there's going to be other Horror Unleashed locations. We know Chicago is in the works, and but what is the shelf life for this? What like have you thought about how long can we have these four staples, or is this it?
That's a good question, and I'll say back to you, it's a lot of us taking a page of this event. This event had a natural yearly change because everything had to go away. Most of the stuff, because it was temporary in nature, what came back, sometimes we had to move locations and then it had to be a new design and stuff. So that kind of became what we felt not only worked for us from a brand perspective for Halloween Horror Nights, but also in the market. It was what we found was made us different than some of the other theme park attractions that did Halloween events. This is a new model. This is a new thing to be able to understand and recognize, and so we're in that learning process right now. What is that length of an attraction that's the right length of time? Is it yearly? Is it a few years? When will our audience want things to change versus when they want things to stay? Because we've also known in some of our event, there's some beautiful haunted houses that we would love to repeat, but we know because we change everything every year that when we have repeated a haunted house, we've only done this once, and it was American Werewolf in London. Uh, is that the audience really was disappointed because they said, "Oh, we've seen that," even though that was only a small portion of our audience because we have new people that come every year to our event. It just was looked upon as that, oh, it wasn't something that they either gotten used to. So we're in that kind of learning phase right now. I think we're in that point of understanding when does our audience want to see something change, what level of change, and then how frequently does it change. So I think that's the stuff that we're going to see the next few years of this, attraction becomes something that we're going to be seeing new and different things, and then we'll start to see what establishes kind of that kind of cadence that becomes what is the future.
I mean, I will go on record as saying I remember the American Werewolf in London house when it first debuted and then when it came back, and as one of my all-time favorite houses, I was pickled or tickled pink, to see it come back. So I loved it. Although, man, I just as an aside, I imagine that would have to be a logistical nightmare to not a fun kind of nightmare to swap out houses, considering the amount of downtime in the build to change that kind of thing. So
Well,
I don't
I
envy you that.
Oh yeah.
yeah, well, I mean, there's probably a lot of space that is built in, knowing this kind of thing might have to happen. That when you went, you probably were not showing those spaces off. You know what I mean? But we have built spaces throughout that aren't necessarily in use that are for those kind of transition times, or we knew that this was going to be something that we might have to do and might have to facilitate this type of turnover. And so we did logistically try to figure that out. It is important to note that this is a flagship, of a brand. And I mean, already the amount of learnings we're getting from there and we're applying to Chicago is night and day. I mean, it's really interesting, and I want to say, I think what obviously Universal creates incredible things, and you go to them and you're like, wow, this is amazing. But I would say what Universal does best is then listen to the guest and hear what they're saying and then adjust to make it even better. And I think that's the secret to Universal success. Truly, if you were just asking me my opinion, I think the secret to Universal success is not just executing the first time and making something as cool as Las Vegas, but then listening to the people, hearing what people have to say, and then going, okay, that's great. And then, we're going to do another one in Chicago and hear what they say. We're going to take all that information, and then we're going to come back and we're going to work to make this the very best it possibly can be. And that's just the Universal way. That's just what Universal does. They are incredible at listening to guests and listening to guest feedback, and then pivoting to make it even better based on that.
Before we run out of time, I do want to talk about sort of the show element as well as food and dining and making that a cohesive part of this entire experience. I mean, Jack, I know the character of Jack from, many years at Halloween Horror Nights, bringing Jack into Las Vegas. Can you enlighten me about the development of that and that show and why it was even necessary to have sort of this staple mascot present within this Horror Unleashed space?
Well, Jack has always been, and as you know, has really been a major character in our history and our storytelling. Uh, he has always been somebody who has not only, I think, been very horrific in his demeanor. People love him, people are afraid of him. But I have to say, from the many years that he has showed up, he's always been very, very successful in really, having a statement. And I think, like anything, if we're going to start and tell the world we're doing a year-round haunted attraction, why wouldn't we have Jack as a part of our character catalog of unique things that you want to experience out in Las Vegas? So that was kind of a part of him being included. How he showed up, how his world became part of the experience, became a little bit of what we talked a little bit about too, which was that the entertainment areas within the building also transform as you move through the space. Back to that environments that kind of signify more of that classic horror to some of this very unique and chaotic horror that Jack brings. And so that's why as you move through the overall building, the space changes also and it evolves, much like we would expect your night would be by going into various locations that are attractions, by sitting down and having some of the unique food and beverage offerings that are there that also changed a little bit through the seasons. And so that's why Jack was important to say, hey, haunted houses are part of what we do. Characters are a major piece of that, which Jack is, but also his unique brand of horror, which is this very, I think, crazy type show environment and atmosphere is a piece of that. I can let Nate talk a little bit about some more of that. But again, it's those different types of ways to entertain our guests. And that was also important. Back to is not only is the content need to be diverse, but the way that we entertain our guests. That's why I think food and beverage is a piece of that because that's new and different. Show product is a piece of that because again, it's just different how people take that type of experience in versus walking through a haunted house is a whole different type of entertainment experience. And we look at those different things and we try to push all those things together. So in a given visit, you're getting a lot for your time and what speaks best to you and what you like in the way of horror entertainment.
Yeah, and it was a bit, I mean, honestly, Jack is a bit of a gift just based on story and through line because again, we built this as a production house and a production warehouse, and so you have dead storage in the front, and oh, yeah, there's the old Jack
Love it.
figurine that you can get.
It's how much we're fans. We buy all this stuff, stick it in our office.
Yeah, exactly. But you have the film vault, which they've marked out and called Kill Vault, and the prop graveyard, and then the back part is where everything kind of comes into the building, and that was the shipping and receiving. So we have a shipping and receiving section, and then here we have a character whose backstory that's been built over years of Halloween Horror Nights is that this box was just shipped to Universal, and nobody knew what was in it, and they opened it, and out popped Jack. And so how perfect that, okay, well, we're going to put Jack's box in the shipping and receiving area, and then he's going to pop out. So it just kind of worked really well with the through line and the area that we built, and also simultaneously worked with the fact that that's our more traditional area. Just creepy clowns are a traditionally scary Halloween sort of thing, and so he works perfect for that as well. So he just had he and Chance had a perfect home there in the back in shipping and receiving of our production warehouse there. And yeah, I just think from an iconic standpoint, they have been our icons, and so you can't carry on this brand without infusing them, you know.
Well, and I really enjoyed the shows and the food and beverage experiences because sort of the impact of it for me was as I was sitting there and maybe having a drink or a bite to eat in between the houses. Okay, we're taking in the shows, but also you're interacting with the other fans that are there. And as someone's pouring out of a house, getting really looking really freaked out, it then hypes you up for when you go in. So that was super effective. The other thing, to your credit, is, and our publicist Alex, I spoke to him about this. So I love haunted houses, but you can startle me, but I don't. And like I love getting startled, but I also sometimes it is hard to be startled. You kind of
Oh
know the
yeah.
business a little bit, but
You're more the aficionado who probably goes through and claps and
oh, so giddy. Like I love
okay,
it. It's
yeah.
giddy. It's not in a mocking way. I'm laughing because I'm so full of joy.
Yeah.
But more than any other, I think, Halloween Horror Nights in a long time, you guys got me many times. But the one house that full on I like stayed with me like consistently almost to an unsettling level was Texas Chainsaw because
Awesome.
right off the bat, man, like I go in and I have this interaction that then leads to this kind of surprise jump and I'm in, but and even moments where I'm like, okay, I don't think anything's happening in this room. Oh, nope, something's happening. It got me.
Yeah.
So hats off to you on that one. But I'm also curious, even though you designed these and even though you know all the ins and outs, what were the moments for you walking through that got you? Even when you know there's supposed to be a monster around the corner, what are the moments that got you guys?
Well,
Get one of this.
we so yes, I'll agree with you. You know what? We jokingly say, well, that the type of designs that we create, it's a mix of art and science. So the art really is the stories and the characters we bring to light. The science is how we do it. So all of the specific layout, the choreography of the show set, plus the effects and stuff, works a certain way by design. So when it's working right and when it's doing everything you want to do, you don't get scared because we know exactly when it's supposed to fire, what's supposed to happen, when is this character supposed to come and attack. Uh, the times that you'll get, for me, startled is when the house is either shut down, closing for the night, when it's not operating the way it's supposed to operate. And somebody happens to be in the house who happens to be walking through, maybe even not trying to scare you or do something, is when they'll come around a corner and you're not expecting somebody to be there in this place. And those are the things. I remember in my early days, uh, when I was working the event, I was walking through a haunted house that was operating and I had gotten a call again on a walkie-talkie. Nowadays that's nothing. Is that, oh, we have a problem in one of the other part of the event. So I was thinking about at that moment, which is the biggest error that we know the guests do, is that when you're not paying attention to your environment, that's how we scare you. Well, I did that biggest thing. I was not paying attention. I was thinking about how do I get out of the house? Where's one of the exits? When is one of the back doors so I can jump out? Because I had to go to some other place. Well, I started walking through the next show scene, forgetting completely where the scare was. Young actor jumps out at me, scares me, makes me step back. When the person recognized who I was and knew I was part of the show team, he immediately says, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And I laughed at him because I said, no, 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 you're doing a great job. I appreciate you scaring me. He felt so bad. I felt bad for him. And then at that point, I was like, can I scoop in your boo hole? Because I have to leave this place right now. So I ran out of the building. But yeah, so that's usually when I get scared, is that when you're not paying attention and you're moving through the space and you certainly forget where you are and what's supposed to happen, is when you'll get me sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a specific story of this, and we were in rehearsals, like final rehearsals for Unleash Vegas, and I'm a little on edge with demons and just the whole subject matter of demons. and things like that. So Exorcist is a big one for me. I mean, I think it's just really creepy in a great way. But different things kind of show up as you're getting close to open. And right at the very end of that house, this is kind of cool. When we a side note, when we did the Exorcist house here, the movie hadn't come out yet, and all we had was the script and some a little bit of footage, and we didn't really know exactly what it was. And so when we did it in Vegas, we were able to actually kind of change some scenes and add some things that really went along with the film. And one of the things we added at the end that was this kind of sewer type place that they kept going, where they found that they became possessed and all that. And so we added that at the end, this kind of area. And we were it's funny because the scare worked exactly like it's supposed to. We love to do what's called a distraction scare, where we have you look at something really cool, and you're so focused on that you forget you're in a scare house, and then boom, that's where the scare comes. Well, that exact thing happened to me, but it's because we had a statue of Catherine at the end, this really nasty statue that's kind of sitting in a corner, and it's supposed to make you kind of lean in and look at it, and then turn the corner, and as you turn, we have a final Catherine that hits you. But we didn't have that statue in the house the whole time. And so when I got through on this final rehearsal, I came through and I was like, oh, we got our Catherine. And so I was like so excited. And it worked exactly right, because I forgot I was in a final dress rehearsal for this house. And I'm just like sitting there looking at this thing, and this little gal is just waiting for me to turn the corner. And the second I turned, she just, rah! And I mean, man, she just about floored me. And they love that, because they love to scare the guy who doesn't get scared. You know what I mean? But just the tiniest little thing dressed as like this nasty dead Catherine scared the heck out of me. So that was a kind of a fun moment where they got me. I mean, they got me, and the scare actually worked exactly right, because I was focused on that body and then turned the corner and she nailed me.
I love it.
Yeah.
I know we got 2 minutes left on the clock, but let me ask real quickly. Um, Dish for me. Reveal each of you an Easter egg within Horror Unleashed Vegas that people can look out for. Your personal favorite Easter egg or something, and it can either be from the movies or from other iterations from Halloween Horror Nights. TJ.
Well, I'll probably steal yours.
Maybe.
So we got lucky. So like anything, our overall story thematic was this wonderful warehouse that had collected, a century years of Universal film history. Well, there is some of that in the building. There is a fair amount of stuff from Halloween Horror Nights within the space. But one of the prized pieces is, as soon as you walk in the front, off to the left actually is a miniature mummy sphinx that was actually in the opening credits for the Brendan Fraser mummy. And if you look over at my shoulder,
Yeah.
I was a part of Universal at the time when those films came out, and was very, very excited about the relaunch of the mummy and those films. And we had done some stuff here in Orlando that really showcased a lot of the behind the scenes. So we got set pieces and costumes and makeup items and stuff like that, which I still have been able to still have a few of those components of it. So getting our hands, actually, this was out in our Hollywood backlot. We were able to identify that, bring that over to Las Vegas, and actually able to have it in the building. And so it just legitimizes not only the reality of our storytelling, but again, the wealth of history that this company has in the world of horror. And that was something that not only made me happy, but also made me feel proud that, we're continuing a history of 100 years of telling, these horror stories. And this is another step in that kind of, storytelling. So that was exciting.
Yeah, I think for me it's a Halloween Horror Nights thing, and I worked pretty closely with Charles Crow in the first Slaughter Cinema House, and we kind of ideated some of those crazy movies that, those B class movies we were going to put in there together. And one of them was called, well, it was based on Critters, and it had these little, these little monsters, these tiny little monsters. But then when you turn the corner, there's this massive monster head that came out to get you. And it's the first time we ever did that kind of scare, and it was so effective that almost every year we have one of those big heads that pops out at you now. It was one of those kind of new scares that we try. We try new things every year, and that one just took. But that was the very first one. And if you go through the prop graveyard, that big, huge head is like up on the top right. I sent a picture to Charles when we went through. I was like, "Oh my gosh, look who made it into the, into this space." But we kind of raided some of our actual HHN prop graveyards and threw a lot of good stuff in there. And so there's also a bear, HHN bear, that kind of got its own Facebook page and became Horror Nights famous, and we threw him in there. And so there's a lot of great Horror Night stuff throughout as well. And I think those things stand out for me as the most fun, just because I've been with the event for so long. I love bringing some of that back for our real fans of our event to go through and go, "Oh my gosh, I recognize that,"
Yeah. Well, I was excited for Horror Unleashed, but I was truly blown away. I loved it far more than I even anticipated. So it's a really great experience. And TJ and Nate, thank you so much for your time and being so gracious with your time to talk about Horror Unleashed Vegas. And I can't wait. We'll have to circle back and talk about Chicago
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
others.
And I love to hear that, man. I mean,
Yeah.
like the thing that means the most to us is our true fans and what they truly feel. And we know that our fans will tell us, you know what I mean? We trust them to tell us, you missed the mark, or hey, this hit. So for you to say it hit for you and hit in a way you didn't expect, I love that. It means so much to us. So
Yeah.
thank you for taking the time. We appreciate you.
Yeah.
And that was TJ Mannarino and Nate Stevenson with Universal Orlando and Horror Unleashed, talking about Horror Unleashed, the year-round permanent haunted house attraction in Las Vegas. And just go check it out. It's so much fun. It's such a good experience. And personally, I wrote about this for dailydead.com. I have a very exhaustive review of Horror Unleashed up over there. But quick hits, man, the food is great there. The Blumhouse Premier House restaurant that it's called Boiler Bread. It's cheesy, gooey bread. It's so good. The cocktails are great. And then the houses themselves, just exceptional. Incredible production value. They really let you walk through the house, and it feels like you can really take your time and breathe as you're walking through those houses. The top houses for me, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, at the top. It was unsettling. It was twisted. It had a lot of scares, a lot of bang for its buck. It was a great house, and I knew it was going to be great, but I actually thought the Universal Monsters house would be the top of the list, and that is a close tie because it's just so gorgeous, and it's such a Valentine to my younger Monster Kid self and my current Monster Kid self. And then Scarecrow the Reaping and the Exorcist Believer house, both really solid houses, just enjoyable all around. You could really spend several hours at Horror Unleashed, watching the shows, dining, going through the houses, having some drinks, and people watching and interacting with all the other scare actors. I would go back in a heartbeat, really enjoy it, and I love the holiday overlays that they're doing with Horror Unleashed. So I think they've got a lot more up their sleeve and a lot of space with that 110,000 square feet installation. So anyhow, check out Horror Unleashed, which we're talking about on halfway to Halloween. Walpurgisnacht on the eve of Beltane. And how are you celebrating your spooky vibes all year round? Let me know. And also, don't forget, come join me over at the Patreon, patreon.com/Aaron Sagers, where we have live episodes, special guests, exclusive episodes, and don't forget to check out the Spooky Explorers Club.com website, where we are hosting our third spooky season trip to Orlando, Florida, to Walt Disney World. It's very limited, 20 people, and we're doing private guides, tiki bar takeover. It's going to be good times. Okay, folks, I'm I'm Aaron Sagers. This has been Talking Strange. Until next time, be kind, stay spooky, and keep it weird.